Tonight on The Late Debate, London businesses pay the price of a Trump presidency. With profits at risk, can the government strike a tariff deal many desperately want?
We're just a little business, but why would we get hit like this for no apparent reason? So we're going to do real damage.
Also tonight, the biggest test of public opinion since Keir Starmer took over at number 10. What chance of a big upset in the local elections? And the big cuts even the Met admits could leave staff really stretched. Hello and welcome to The Late Debate. Donald Trump's second term in the White House is proving costly after the president stuck to his promise on tariffs. Businesses here are worried about the impact on profits and are pinning their hopes on a trade deal. The Chancellor is trying to hammer out an agreement in Washington, but what chance of a breakthrough? In her front room in Romford, Paula Mee might seem an unlikely target of Trump tariffs. Paula Mee hand-weaves textile jewellery, and America is her biggest export market. But the 10% tariff will force her to put up her prices.
My customers are independent shops in US. They are also small businesses like mine. So their business will be affected if the cost goes up. And I feel that will discourage them to order or work with my brand. And I'm very worried with that because US has been one of my strongest markets.
In Peckham, Kmet is one of London's smaller metal bashing firms. For more than 70 years, it's been turning out trays and trolleys for hotels and restaurants. A dozen people work here, and a fifth of the sales are to America. But the trays are aluminium, and the 25% tariff has already cost the company orders.
We're just a little business, but why would we get hit like this for no apparent reason? So we're going to do real damage, not just to little businesses, but to the world economy. It's bonkers. We'll try and survive, but being bullied like this is not great for a little business.
London's lucrative financial and legal services could also be hit. Accountants, lawyers and marketing experts in the city have clients across the UK.
For example, car manufacturers in Britain, they're buying legal services, they're buying accountancy services, they're buying consultancy services, they're buying advertising services, PR services from service firms in London. And if they cut their budgets, that will hit London.
But for some firms, there may be opportunities. This popcorn business in Park Royal is expecting its US sales to take a hit, but it could also benefit from an America-China trade war.
China's a large market for us as well, and if the American-China trade war plays out, effectively American popcorns become 100% more expensive, so there must be an opportunity for us to send more to China.
In Romford, Paula Mee is now researching new markets in the hope of selling her jewellery to Australia, Asia and the Middle East. But for many businesses, a trade deal with the US can't come soon enough. Joining me now to discuss that are my guests this week. From Labour, the MP for Mitcham and Morden, Dame Siobhan McDonagh. For the Conservatives, the Shadow Home Secretary and MP for Croydon South, Chris Philp. And for the Liberal Democrats, the MP for Harpenden and Berkhamsted, Victoria Collins. Welcome all of you. Siobhan, what sort of deal should Rachel Reeves be looking for?
The very best ones she can get. To take it cool, to take it calm. We learned last night that President Trump is moving away from some of his more aggressive positions in that he's backing off China, he's backing off a number of things. So I imagine what we hope is that we'll be able to do a deal, but in the overall sense of tariffs, that enough people will be speaking to him in America itself to
What do you
worry.
think of Trump tariffs?
They frighten me. I am a great fan of the American president, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. And so I've always read quite a lot about the Grand Depression in the 1930s, and it worries me that the tariffs are taking us back to the same place. So I hope that those around President Trump can convince him to step back. And so far, it looks hopeful.
Chris, do you sense that Labour's closer to a deal with Trump than your government was?
Well, we were negotiating a deal, but the Biden administration, when they came in, cancelled the talks. I think it's very regrettable that Jonathan Reynolds, the business secretary, didn't even meet his opposite number until 4 months after the election. Look, I think a trade deal is really important for all the reasons that Those small businesses in London set out on your footage a moment ago. We do need a free trade deal. I do believe in free trade. My favourite American president is Ronald Reagan. He believed in free trade.
I'm not surprised, you know.
Yeah, I'm not surprised either. And Ronald Reagan believed in free trade as well. But I was also interested by what the IMF said this week. They said that the problems the UK economy faces with growth going down and inflation going up aren't caused by Trump and the tariffs, worrying though those are. They're caused by Keir Starmer's budget last October, with all of these tax increases, business rates going up, JD Motors in my
Except, of course, in February we saw the last figures we saw an increase in growth. And the Office of Budget Responsibility said in its recent statement that our plans to build more homes, many of them in London and the surrounding area, will actually create growth.
Well, unfortunately, the growth forecast for this year was halved by the OVR. We're seeing employment going down already, and the IMF say that is because of Labour's budget, not because of Donald Trump's tariffs.
With tariffs and the trade deal for a moment. Victoria, do you have any concerns about what the deal might involve?
Absolutely. I mean, you know, those small businesses are right at the heart of what we do, and actually they have been impacted by Labour's budget. I speak to my businesses in Harpenden and Berkhamsted, many of whom work and in London as well, in that commuter link. But right now they're very worried as well about what's going to happen. There's been no doubt that's had an impact on the international and local economy. But that's why the Liberal Democrats warned about this from the very beginning. Very first Prime Minister's questions, Ed Davey brought this up, and are calling on Labour to guarantee that this must go through proper scrutiny, and there should be a parliamentary vote on any trade deal, and we can't have things like the Online Safety Act, our food security, all our questions around that cannot be up for negotiation. We've got to get this right for British
Siobhan, you must
businesses.
hear from firms in your business about not just the tariffs but also about the national insurance increase. Does that worry you?
Well, we have choices, don't we? I mean, the benefit of being in government is you get to make the decisions. The benefit of being in opposition is that you get to pick holes in it and to want all things. The choice is, do we want more GPs? Do we want shorter NHS waiting lists? Do we want our hospitals improved? Because in the end, the only way the government has money is by raising it through people's taxes.
Well, I'm afraid so. The choices that Keir Starmer made last October, I think, were the wrong choices. Massive pay rises in the public sector, including for train drivers, 10 grand pay rise. With no performance improvements in return. Tens of billions of pounds for some of Ed Miliband's mad projects, all paid for by tax rises on business, which will hit working people, which Labour falsely said they weren't going to do before the election. In my constituency, JD Motors, little garage, their business rates are going up from $2,000 a year to $6,000 a year. Small businesses on the high street are getting hit by those business rate increases and national insurance, and they are threatening jobs, actually even more than Trump's tariffs.
Can I just bring you back to what you said about Reagan? He was seen very much as a friend of the UK. Is Trump a friend of the UK?
Well, I think America is a very long-standing ally, and we need to work with whoever is in the White House. And there are, many areas of common interest. But obviously, I'm concerned about some of the things he's doing. The tariffs being one of those, and actually the way he's approached the Russia-Ukraine war being another. But look, America's a long-standing ally, and we do need to work closely with them on security issues and on trade and business issues, and just navigate through whatever difficulties may lie before us.
I mean, having said that, though, I think standing up to Trump is extremely important. We can't, Kemi Badenoch, Nigel Farage going cap in hand is not a way to stand up to Donald Trump. And actually, what we see is,
what we see is, met Donald Trump. She can't go cap in hand.
Well, but what we see is we need to have strength, and that's what we're saying. Is also we need to work with our European neighbours on this, and that is both economically important, but also
I think standing up just to make yourself feel good about how you're doing it, or caving in is not the answer. You've got to navigate a very, very careful path. And I think that Keir Starmer's worst enemies would say that actually he's done really well and played a blinder so far.
Should the state visit go ahead?
The president's been invited. Yes, of course.
Do you think so, Chris?
Yes, I do. We do need to work with the Americans, as I say. But, Keir Starmer sort of prostrated himself in the Oval Office a few weeks ago, and it has not secured us a free trade deal.
He didn't hold the president's hands, unlike Theresa May.
And he's got, he certainly did metaphorically, and we haven't got a better deal than dozens of countries around the world.
Should the state visit go ahead?
I think the state visit can go ahead. What's important is getting that trade deal right and also working with our European partners.
I have to say, I think Keir Starmer played a blinder on that, presenting a letter for a state visit that President Trump was clearly delighted with.
It hasn't helped us, has it? We've still got tariffs.
I think that's we haven't come to the end game yet, and you've got to play this very carefully because you were playing with people's businesses and people's livelihoods. So you've got to do this as well as you possibly can.
And does playing it carefully mean Sadiq Khan having to bite his tongue during a state visit and not endorse too many of the protests?
I think that's a matter for the Mayor himself. I think he'll understand how tough could be for London.
OK, lovely. Thank you for that for the moment. Now, voters will have plenty to think about when they go to the polls in next week's local elections, including in Buckinghamshire. Both the Conservatives and Liberal Democrats launched their campaigns there. And the Lib Dem leader, Sir Ed Davey, will be hoping to take control of a council which has only ever been held by the Tories. Elsewhere in the home counties, there are elections in Hertfordshire and Kent, in the biggest test of public opinion since the general election. So, Victoria, your county, Hertfordshire, are the Lib Dems going to take control?
We take nothing for granted, but we've certainly been working hard for many years, and we're working hard now. And we are the biggest opposition party across Hertfordshire, so hoping to make that change. But what we've shown is that, unfortunately, when it comes to SEND education, when it comes to roads, Hertfordshire has one of the 10 worst in the country. SEND education got one of the worst ratings that you could get, and we've been working hard for local people, and we'll see what they decide on the 1st of May.
Do you see this, Chris, as a test of Kemi Badenoch's brand of conservatism?
Well, look, I think, first of all, these are going to be tough elections for the Conservatives because the last time these were contested in 2021, it was a sort of high watermark and we won. I think it was pretty much 2/3 of the seats that were up. So we should just be honest that these are tough elections. But I think we do have a good message to sell. Council tax in Conservative councils is lower than it is in Labour or Lib Dem controlled councils. And if you look, on average, if you look at the, fly tipping, 72% of the worst fly tipping councils are Labour. Keir Starmer promised before the election he would freeze council tax. That turns out to be completely untrue. It's going up by £109 for an average Band D property. So a litany of broken promises. So I think our local councillors do a good job up and down the country, both as individuals and in terms of running these councils. And these are, of course, local elections about who can best run local areas.
But is the Prime Minister going to get a kicking?
Well, that would be hard because we don't have many of the seats. We don't control any county councils. I think probably in the councils up for election, we only control 2. So the stakes are really there for the Conservatives on this one because, as was already said, there was a high watermark for them at the last consequent elections.
OK, well, before we go any further, let's hear from Reform UK and the Greens to find out what they think of their chances next Thursday.
At the moment, according to today's opinion polls, we're topping the national polls. There are so many three-way marginals in these counties. I tell you what, if you can call who's going to win those seats, you're a better man than I. Are we competing in those three-way races? Absolutely we are. But frankly, anything could happen. And I think a lot of seats will be won by 100 votes here, 100 votes there.
People are looking for a party that is offering a fresh alternative, but that's a positive alternative that's about defending the environment, fighting the Labour government that's trying to bring in cuts to local councils. We want to resist that, restore local services, and also increase the amount of affordable housing that's available to people in an area where prices are just going up and up.
Victoria, Nigel Farage was in Hemel Hempstead earlier this week. Is reform a noticeable threat? I mean, we know the home counties by and large voted Remain.
Where I am in Harpenden, Berkhamsted, Tring, there are trickles of a few, but quite frankly, what we find is on the doorstep, people are just unhappy with the status quo. And actually, when we turn up, they say, well, actually, we'll possibly vote for you, because what they're looking for are those local champions. And then when they realise that it's Lib Dems, I mean, it's coming through a little bit, but it's not that strong in my area.
You've been campaigning, Chris. Have you heard much about reform?
Yes, I was out in Royston earlier this week in Hertfordshire.
Which is a Hertfordshire seat.
And I didn't hear a huge amount of reform. The choice really there is between the Conservatives and the sort of left of centre alternatives. So the few people that were considering reform, when they understand the choices between the Conservatives or the various sort of left-wing alternatives, they do tend to come to the Conservatives when you have that conversation.
Siobhan, can you understand the anger among some voters in Essex and Surrey and Thurrock in Essex, where the elections have been cancelled because of Angela Rayner's local government reforms?
I've not come across any such anger. Voters don't normally cry out for county council or local council elections. So I would be surprised if there's much. I think much of it's confected.
There's an allegation from Reform that it's a conspiracy between Labour and the Conservatives to keep Reform out of office.
Yeah, wishful thinking, I think.
But in Surrey, you would have liked the elections there, Victoria, because the Lib Dems did pretty well in Surrey in the general election.
We did very well. We have many MPs in that corner of the world. And yeah, and also, a lot of the Surrey councils really needed to be taken, to the electoral box and for voters to have that chance to have their say. So yes, we would have loved to have those elections, but a lot of them are coming to help us. So I'm very happy about that too.
It is nevertheless then, in Surrey at least, for the Conservatives, a bit of a relief that you're not fighting an election.
No, we're always happy to fight elections. We're proud of our record running these local councils. As I say, Conservative councils do tend to deliver better services and a better deal. So we're happy to fight elections whenever and wherever they come up.
Now, you might say this because we'd expect you to say it because you're in Kemi Badenoch's team, but is she making an impact?
Yeah, I think so. I think Kemi's making a good impact. I think she's, obviously got a tough job in the sense we did have a very, very bad general election last July. The worst for 200 years or something. So clearly it is a tough job to come back from that. And even Margaret Thatcher, after when she became leader in 1975, had to work very hard. But no, Kemi is having a positive impact. At PMQs this week, when she really skewered Keir Starmer over his absurd posturing on the trans issue, where he was saying a couple of years ago women could have a penis, and he's now turned, the Supreme Court have confirmed what all of us knew, common sense. That's obviously nonsense. So she did a great job holding him to account on that and a number of other issues as well. So I'm very pleased to be part of her team, yeah.
Siobhan, do you see Kemi Badenoch as somebody of stature who is going to pose a threat to the Labour Party?
No, they're all fighting like rats in a sack,
No,
aren't they?
No,
See Robert Jenrick moving to have an alliance with Reform, while other people in the party are totally opposed to it. It's a really tough time, when you take, Labour's been there before, when you take a terrible election defeat, it takes a very long time to build yourself up. And the first person who gets that job to be leader is rarely the successor, the winner.
Although, of course, Margaret Thatcher was.
OK,
Yeah.
let's pause on elections for a moment, because the Met is cutting hundreds of jobs because of a big gap in its budget. The Force has to plug a £260 million shortfall despite getting more money from central and local government. Cuts will affect services including forensics, mounted police and dog teams.
We can't undo 14 years' worth of damage with the previous government in 9 months with the...
How long can you go on blaming the past government?
Well, the important thing is to compare 9 months versus 14 years, which is unfair. In 9 months, we've got, going into the Met Police Service, an additional £320 million. That's 6 times more than the previous 14 years.
Chris Philp, we heard the Mayor there, he's convinced it's all down to the last government.
My goodness, Sadiq Khan just makes excuses time after time after time. Look, first of all, under the last Conservative government, we had record police numbers across England and Wales as a whole.
Not in London, though.
We did actually. 149,769. The Met
Under
had
30,000
the Met
officers
the
in
Met had a
London.
head count of well over 30,000. There was also a record in the Met. The Met could have had over 1,000 more officers had Sadiq Khan bothered to recruit them. Now what we see under a Labour government, and indeed a Labour mayor, is this financial year, the new financial year, instead of the police numbers going up and hitting record numbers, as we did in London and across the UK, the Metropolitan Police are saying that 1,700 jobs, some police officers, some police staff, are going to have to be let go, or the numbers are going to go down as a result of the inadequate financial settlement. Because although there is more money going to policing, it's not enough to cover things like the extra national insurance, the pay rises and the pay progression, meaning the Metropolitan Police are going to have to lose jobs, and so are other police forces up and down the UK as well. I did warn about this in December when the government announced the police funding settlement. Unfortunately, Yvette Cooper didn't listen, and the Metropolitan Police staff cuts, which they announced a couple of weeks ago, are the unfortunate consequence of decisions that Labour took, despite the fact they're taxing us to the hilt.
This is awkward for the Mayor, isn't it? He did promise voters in his election last year more police.
Well, the operational number of policing is down to the Commissioner rather than to the Mayor. The truth is that Sadiq has doubled the amount of money and the proportion of money that goes to the Met over what the previous Mayor, Boris Johnson, did. And the current government is given a 7% increase to the Met, 8.5% increase to the police force in the City of London. So the figures are there, but the Commissioner has to make a judgment.
It's not enough. It's not enough to meet the financial pressures, as I warned Yvette Cooper in Parliament just a few months ago.
On everything, you'll all agree, won't you, that we need more police on the streets.
Always.
But what more needs to be done to build trust and confidence back into the police?
Well, I mean, you know, people in Hertfordshire are also worried about this. There are also commuters who come down to London. Many people are impacted by what is put in the resource of London and London Met. And across England and Wales, we've got 5,700 crimes every day that are going unsolved. But I think, I mean, those resources need to be put back in. I completely agree that, you know, the Conservatives let us down for many years, but it's now up to the government to make sure that local policing does get that funding that's needed. We need to rebuild that trust on the streets.
I think the thing that people want is they want neighbourhood police teams. They want to see their officers patrol. I know that's the case in Mitcham and Morden, and we are seeing more officers in those teams, but we could also always deal with more.
You would agree with that, more neighbourhood policing?
Yes, I would, and that's why we delivered record ever police numbers in office last year.
Believes that.
But it's a fact. I mean, go and look at the Office for National Statistics.
Nobody believes it.
Siobhan, it is a fact.
You can shout
it's a fact.
at me as much as you like,
I mean, honestly,
but nobody is seeing those, and nobody has seen those police
Siobhan,
on the street.
Go and look at the ONS website. It is a fact, but we do need to see those police officers deployed on the streets visibly and investigating crime. That is why earlier this week I've said we're going to table an amendment in a bill going through Parliament to abolish non-crime hate incidents, which is wasting 30,000 hours a year of police time that is better spent investigating crime.
Can I tell you about a great initiative we've had locally on shoplifting? Because shoplifting is one of those you know, crimes that have come from nowhere to be at the top of people's concerns, was that the police went to the supermarkets with the greatest problem, put magic markers on it, invisible marking, to actually then raid the shops that they thought were receiving these goods. And they've got 9 people charged with shoplifting offences. And I'm really grateful to the police in Mitcham for doing that initiative and for making that progress.
And that's the kind of idea that can really work. And in Croydon, we've been trialling the use of live facial recognition in the last year or so, which has caught over 200 wanted criminals, including a man wanted for a double rape dating back to 2017, who would otherwise not have been caught. So using technology like live facial recognition can catch a whole load more criminals. So those are 2 examples, one from Siobhan and one from me, of how the police can better use their resources to catch criminals.
I think it's pretty clear that when it comes to policing, when it comes to crime, that you all sing from the same hymn sheet. You might have disagreements about where the money's come from, who spent the most money, who's actually hired the most police officers. But on one thing about the need for policing, you all agree. But that, I'm afraid, is all we've got time for tonight. Thank you to my guests, Siobhan McDonough, Chris Philp and Victoria Collins. We're back next month. Until then, thank you for watching and good night. Thank you very much.